Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to DreamWorks Switch to Life. And in today's video, we are going to be reviewing Dragons: The Nine Realms, the sequel TV show to the How to Train Your Dragon franchise. And you can actually watch all 52 episodes of this series on both Peacock and Hulu. And the reason we're reviewing this show is because it is the last installment in my How to Train Your Dragon review marathon, and also that it has been 3 years since the original series first premiered, and 1 year since it ended. And I'm just gonna say that I loved watching this series. Granted, I'm a big How to Train Your Dragon fan. So the problem that I think a lot of people have is that this was meant to be the spiritual successor for How to Train Your Dragon, and unfortunately, it wasn't. Sure, it continued the main How to Train Your Dragon story, and it actually had a lot of connections to the main franchise. The problem is it's just nowhere near as good as the actual movies. And I guess a big reason for that is, well, one, the animation. The animation is good, I guess, but the problem is it's also the worst animation out of the entire franchise. How is it worse than the preschool series Rescue Riders? I don't know. Honestly, the only show that's actually worse animated is Dragons, Riders, and Defenders of Berk, but I blame that mostly on the age of those shows because they were actually really good. The problem is that with the Nine Realms, while they did have some really cool character designs, their movement wasn't very fluid compared to the original TV shows, which is sad because those shows were really great, especially Race to the Edge. Here, you could tell the animators were just, let's just try and get this show put together. They didn't have a lot of care in it, so I'm actually really sad about that. As for the voice acting, well, once again, not as good as the movies. Sometimes the characters were able to get emotional, but other times it was honestly just like the actors were reading lines off of a script, which is very bad. However, the sound design used for all of the dragons was really good. There are plenty of scenes here where there's a lot of emotion, and that leads me to another point, the music. In the original movies, as well as the TV shows, the music actually carried the story. Here, it kind of felt like the music was just put in to make it so it wasn't a void of sound. Now, I will admit that the music was somewhat good, especially the theme song, and there's plenty of redone versions of John Powell's famous music. The problem is that it's just not as good as the movies. It's not memorable or iconic, and unfortunately, like I said, it doesn't carry the story. It's just there to fill the void. So what does this series do for the world building? Well, I'm glad you asked. Not only does it introduce a lot of brand new dragon species that we've never seen before, but there's also plenty of returning dragon species that we know and love, and we get to learn quite a few facts about them. There's also a lot of connections to the main How to Train Your Dragon series, and even though it's pretty simple that we know Tom is the descendant of Hiccup, there's a story being told that we have to figure out. That's a mystery going into the series. Speaking of, it's time to talk about the story. So one thing that you have to keep in mind about this series is that most of the episodes are filler. They have a generic plot that takes up the entire episode, but there's a couple of scenes in almost every episode that makes each episode important to the overall story, even if that scene is just 20 seconds long, but still. But don't let the fact that most of these are filler episodes fool you, because they are actually really good and very well written. And while the basic premise of we need to keep the dragons a secret might get a little repetitive, they do it in different ways every single time they cover that aspect of the plot. So, first off, the story takes place 1,300 years after the main How to Train Your Dragon franchise, which officially means that How to Train Your Dragon is set in the early 700s. But this series is set in the modern day, you know, the 2020s. So by this point, dragons have officially become just myth and legend. Nobody knows that they actually existed, except for a few select people who believe in conspiracy theories. For instance, June Wong. She believes that dragons did exist because everywhere around the world, people have stories about dragons. They differ by culture, but they're still there. However, our main character is Tom Cullerson. So our story begins when his mom, Olivia Cullerson, predicted that an asteroid that would be coming towards Earth would cause an earthquake that would rip open a fissure to the Earth's core. And, well, she was right. So the fissure was named the Cullerson Fissure after her. So the Rake Company, which is owned by a billionaire named Mr. Rake, decided to send a bunch of explorers to explore the fissure, including Olivia Cullerson and her son, Tom. So Tom is a bit of a mischievous kid. He's always trying to get himself into trouble by leaping first and thinking about consequences later. He's the kind of guy who would dive into a polar bear habitat at a zoo just because he thought the polar bear was lonely. He and his mom would go exploring caves together until, the fissure opened up and gave them all jobs. So then Tom decided to go down into the fissure by himself after he lost his drone. And when he went to retrieve it, he discovered a nightlight, which is the descendant of Toothless. He named the nightlight Thunder and decided to try to take care of it, but in the process ended up revealing the dragon secret to June. Like I said earlier, June Wong believes in myths and legends, mostly because she doesn't believe that they actually happened, but they're stories that are based on real events, and to ignore them would be a really big mistake. So when she discovers that dragons actually do exist, she is extremely happy because she can rub it in her mom's face. So the thing is, because June believes in myths and legends and tarot cards, she's actually ridiculed by her mom because she just lives in silly fantasy world and doesn't actually try to apply herself to the real world. When now that she knows dragons exist, June is actually happy that she was right. So Tom and June go down to the hidden world where they discover a mist twister, which June eventually trains and names Wu and Wei. But they also discover an injured gem breaker, and unfortunately, they have to rope in another one of the kids, D'Angelo Baker. D'Angelo is the son of the security chief, and the problem is that his father is a military man through and through. But D'Angelo doesn't really want that. What he wants is to be an animal caregiver. And then when he discovers that dragons exist, at first he's shocked because this goes against his dad's rules. But at the same time, he's also fascinated because dragons are actually real. And after seeing the injured gem breaker, he befriends it and names her Plowhorn. And then there's the fourth kid, Alex Gonzalez. She is a bit of an introvert. She is one of those hacker people, spends all her time on technology because she hates living in the real world. She hates people, and she has a lot of dark conspiracy theories, not to mention the fact that she's always ready to bring down the mood with a sarcastic comment.
If dragons were real, humanity would exterminate them. Big business would exploit them. Dragons would be hunted to the ends of the earth, chased down, and turned into boots, belts, and burgers, reducing them to a tiny column of profit margins on an endless spreadsheet of doom.
I liked it better when you didn't talk.
The only reason that she joins Dragon Club is because one of the dragons from the hidden world follows the writers home, a Featherhide, which Alex decides to name Feathers. And so our gang is formed in the first 5 episodes. But unfortunately, during those 5 episodes, there's also a bunch of earthquakes that can cause a lot of damage to Rake Town, especially the millions of dollars that was spent to make this exploration happen. And luckily, the kids discover that in episode 6, the cause of the earthquakes is a Fault Ripper dragon, a giant dragon that burrows tunnels. And the problem is that it's up on the surface. So the dragon riders decided to chase off the Fault Ripper down below, deep into the fissure, and when that happens, well, we move on to season 2. So, as the series progresses, every single season has the characters go through some kind of arc, at which point they have a final battle against the dragon in the season finale. There's a total of 8 seasons. So, during season 2, we just see the dragon riders explore the hidden world. And then, at the same time, unfortunately, Eugene shows up. Eugene is June's older brother who is off with his dad during the first season, but he joins this series as a main character in seasons 2 onwards. And so Eugene is a bit of a jerk. Imagine Snotlout, but 2 times worse. As the series progresses, we see him try to bond with the kids because he's bored out of his mind since there's nothing to do in Rake Town. During the season 2 finale, he discovers a notebook containing a bunch of drawings from June, and he just shrugs this off. So during a bunch of filler episodes in season 2, the Dragon Club decides to explore the hidden world. In one of the episodes, there's a forest fire caused by a lumberjack company owned by Leonard.
Don't call me Leonard! Only my mother calls me that. The name's Buzzsaw.
Unfortunately, when the Dragon Riders try to help put out the forest fire, Buzzsaw accidentally sees thunder, and so he views the lightning bird as the cause of the forest fire that burned down his lumber company, and so he makes it his goal in life to get revenge against the lightning bird. But then during the season 2 finale, we see Thunder try to find his family, and the gang faces off against a Titan Wing Skrill, and while they eventually do succeed, they discover the doorway to a new realm in the hidden world. So, in case you are wondering, the show is called The Nine Realms. Why is that? Well, it's because in the hidden world of dragons, there are 9 realms to explore, and they're actually the inspiration for Norse mythology. We have the Crystal Realm, the inspiration for Midgard, aka the home of humans, and unfortunately, there's no humans here in the Crystal Realm. It's just the realm where the Dragon Riders are exploring for the first 2 seasons. Then in season 3, we're introduced to the Fire Realm, the inspiration for Muspelheim. During the 4th season, the Dragon Riders discover the Ice Realm, also known as the inspiration for Niflheim. During the season 4 finale, they discover the King's Realm, which is where the Alpha Dragon will reside in the hidden world. This is the inspiration for Vanaheim, which is actually a place that already exists in the How to Train Your Dragon universe. What I think it's actually supposed to be inspiration for is Valhalla, where the Vikings say they will go when they die in battle. During season 5, we're introduced to the Nature Realm, which is inspiration for Alfheim. During season 6, we're introduced to the Giants Realm, which is also the inspiration for Jotunheim, the realm of giants. Then during season 7, they discover the Desert Realm, which is inspiration for Nidavellir, which is the home of dwarves, trolls, gnomes, and other earth-dwelling creatures. And it's at this point that the Dragon Riders make the connection between the realms of the hidden world and the 9 realms in Norse mythology. And so they try to find the remaining 2 realms, the Dark Realm, also known as Helheim, and then during season 8, they discover the final realm, the God's Realm, the source of all life in the entire hidden world, and it's the inspiration for Asgard. Anyway, let's go back into our story. So, the Dragon Riders start to explore the Fire Realm in Season 3. Meanwhile, Buzzsaw tries to convince Eugene to help him find the mysterious lightning bird. And it's at that point that Eugene starts to believe that dragons might actually exist and his sister isn't crazy. So, he confronts June about this and eventually discovers that they all have dragons of their own, and he demands to join Dragon Club. Luckily, the Dragon Riders say you can't join unless you bond with the dragon. which thankfully Eugene actually does. He meets a web-slinger dragon and after a while befriends it and names him Webmaster. So Eugene is now officially part of the team. But as the season progresses, we discover that a bunch of flamethrowers led by a giant dragon called the Sky Torture are causing a lot of problems in the Crystal Realm because they're supposed to be in the Fire Realm. So they have a final battle against them, and I really love how they do it because Tom is feeling guilty for pushing the Fault Ripper from season 1 down to the bottom of the fissure. And so he tries to train and befriend the Fault Ripper to make up for his mistake. So the Fault Ripper actually helps the Dragon Riders save the Crystal Realm from the Sky Torture. And when they do, they find a mysterious puzzle box which seems to hold the secrets that Tom has been searching for. At the end of season 1, Thunder made a burn mark that looks exactly like an emblem on one of Tom's family heirlooms, a Viking helmet. He's been trying to figure out how his ancestry is connected to the Dragon Realm, and well, for anyone who is not an idiot, it's super obvious. He's a descendant of Hiccup Haddock, and it's actually even more obvious when you consider the name Colorsin. In Latin, that literally translates to son of Haddock. Then during season 4, the gang discovers a sinkhole, and it turns out that back during season 3, Buzzsaw fell into this sinkhole, and he discovered the doorway to the Ice Realm. And so now during season 4, the Dragon Riders are trying to find a key to the puzzle box as well as Buzzsaw so they can protect the Dragon Realm from this maniac. And I love Buzzsaw because, you know, Dagger the Deranged from Dragons, Riders of Berk, Defenders of Berk, and Race to the Edge, he is 3 times as deranged as Dagger. He's been eating dragons to help him survive the Ice Realm, but at the same time as an act of revenge. Eventually, when the team discovers Buzzsaw, he tries to get revenge against the Lightning Bird, aka Thunder, and eventually he just turns his wrath towards all dragon kind. His goal is to get revenge against the Lightning Bird, but also to kidnap a bunch of dragons and use them as food and sell their hides online so that he can make some really cool stuff like fabrics and tapestries and get super rich and famous. But his ultimate goal is to become the self-proclaimed king of dragons and rule over all dragonkind. Unfortunately, he also has some right-hand man, some former lumberjack employees, Dude, Winston, and Ford. Dude doesn't show up except for one episode, but after that, Winston and Ford are his right-hand men, and they basically just are abused by him and forced to do his bidding. And then he's also kidnapped a timberjack dragon, who he's named Jack, and I really love how we actually have a timberjack as a character. That's like the one dragon out of the classic How to Train Your Dragon species that never got a specific episode. Here, Jack is present throughout the majority of the series, which I really loved. But anyway, Buzzsaw, Jack, and Winston and Ford are all major threats to the Dragon Realm, so the Dragon Riders have to help stop this threat. Meanwhile, they're also looking for a key to the mysterious puzzle box, and eventually Tom accidentally breaks his Viking helmet, and when he does, he discovers that one of the horns is the key to the puzzle box. So he opens it and discovers the Book of Dragons, the same one from the original How to Train Your Dragon series, and there's a lot of updates in this new book. However, one thing that I don't like is that in the original movies and TV shows, you can actually translate the Book of Dragons thanks to the Viking runes. Here, when you translate this Book of Dragons, it's just a bunch of gibberish, random letters thrown in. It's clearly written in Norse runes, so they have to translate it, but when they do, they discover that Tom is related to Hiccup Haddock, as well as Astrid Hofferson, not to mention a lot of facts about the dragons that they encounter in the hidden world, which is a big problem, because apparently in How to Train Your Dragon The Hidden World, the Vikings decided not to go to the hidden world, just the dragons. So that means that somehow somehow, after the hidden world, Hiccup and the Dragon Rider gang decided to go exploring. Possible How to Train Your Dragon 4? Because there's very clearly a story there. We'll talk more about that. But anyway, like how Hiccup was trying to find Toothless's family, Tom was spending the first 4 seasons trying to help Thunder re-find his family, and during the season 4 finale, we see them all reunite in the King's Realm, and we learned that Toothless never lost the title of Alpha Dragon. He just passed it down to his descendants. It's there that we meet the Elder Nightlight, who is the current King of Dragons. Unfortunately, Thunder is forced to say goodbye, but then the Dragon Riders help protect the Nightlights against a couple of snow wraiths, so Thunder is allowed to rejoin the Dragon Riders. And then Tom returns home to their hiding place, and they find out that Olivia discovered the hiding place. So now Olivia knows about the secret. And at first Tom is grounded because he lied to his mom, and then during the rest of season 5, we see the team try to convince Olivia not to tell their parents. But at the very end of season 5, there's a super bad blizzard that puts the entire town of Raketown at risk. And luckily, that's when Tom decides the secret needs to come out. So the dragons help protect the people from the snowstorm. So during season 6, the Dragon Riders now have to focus on keeping the peace between dragons and humanity. And I do love how the humans keep looking to Tom because he's technically the leader of the Dragon Riders as the Dragon Whisperer. And unfortunately, that just sidelines the other riders. They also put their burdens on Tom, making it so that he's constantly stressed, even though the other Dragon Riders are right there. And I love it because while it's not very good, it does add a lot of drama to the series. Unfortunately, during the season 6 finale, Buzzsaw ends up stealing the Book of Dragons from the Dragon Riders, at which point he announces his kingdom and empire to the citizens of Raketown. And so it's on to season 7, where we see D'Angelo making a dragon hospital. And I love it because it gives D'Angelo a chance to defy his father. Instead of becoming the military man, D'Angelo is able to follow his dream of becoming a veterinarian. And while most of the people are upset that he's spending a lot of time in the hospital, I love that he's doing something that makes him happy. And after a while, even his father supports his dream of not being a military man, which I really loved. Also, Tom and June officially become a couple, which I was pretty happy about. But unfortunately, due to this, a lot of the Dragon Riders are spending time apart. There's a lot of discontent between them. So when June decides to do a tarot card reading for them, they discover that the team will break up. And while they try to stay together, by the end of the episode, they realize that they just don't fit well together. So the Dragon Riders split apart. Unfortunately, that's bad because there's a lot of trouble going on in the Dragon Realms, especially from Wilma Sledkin. See, Sledkin was handpicked by Mr. Rake to oversee Fissure production and make sure that they actually turn a profit, because apparently that's all Sledkin cares about. She cares so much about making a profit that during the earlier seasons, when she and Olivia discover Dragonsight, she takes the work for herself and decides to understand the properties of Dragonsight. So Dragonsight is a gem found in the Hidden Realm, and when it's heated up, it gives off a mist. That mist is actually oxygen. Also, it's harder than a diamond, which is really saying something. So Sledkin is trying to gather as much Dragonsight as she can, which ends up putting the Dragon Realm at risk because, like I said, when it's heated up, Dragonsight gives off oxygen. This is the dragon's only source of oxygen, and she doesn't really care about dragons. In fact, she actually abuses a terrible terror to help her with her studies. So, Sledkin goes down to the hidden world to gather as much dragonite as possible, at which point Buzzsaw convinces her to team up with him. So, now with the Dragon Riders divided, as well as the villains working together, now there's a very big problem in the hidden realm, especially because Buzzsaw is trying to use the Book of Dragons to help him conquer the Dragon Realm and create the Dragon Empire. And he discovers a Death Dragon. With the help of Sledkin, who translates the Norse runes, he knows the location of the Death Dragon is in the Dark Realm. So during the Season 7 finale, the Dragon Riders travel to the Dark Realm to stop Buzzsaw from freeing the Death Dragon, and they discover that the Death Dragon is none other than Jormungandr, which, if you know Norse mythology, is the world serpent destined to bring about Ragnarok, the end of the world. Yeah, I was actually surprised that they brought Jormungandr as an actual character in this. Anyway, Jormungandr is believed to be the son of Loki. I have no idea how that works, but essentially, Jormungandr's only purpose is to bring about Ragnarok, the end of the world, the death of all dragons. And the way it's going to do that is by trying to locate the God's realm, the source of all life in the dragon realm. At first, Buzzsaw wants to control Jormungandr, that's why he tried to free him, but unfortunately, after seeing Jormungandr in action, gives up on that quest. So, thousands of years ago, Jormungandr was just roaming around the hidden world causing chaos. Luckily, somehow, Hiccup decided to go down to the hidden world and capture Jormungandr in a Grunkle iron cage. And thankfully, it actually held him for over 1,000 years. Unfortunately, now Buzzsaw decided to try to free Jormungandr, and it was actually Thunder who decided to solve Hiccup's puzzle and make it so that Jormungandr was released so that he could save Tom from Jack and the Sky Torture. After Jormungandr almost kills the Sky Torture, everybody realizes that Jormungandr is a threat to the Dragon Realm. So, during Season 8, after having a bit of an outburst in Season 7, the Dragon Riders come together once again as a team. And it's not very reluctant, they actually come together as friends after their whole fight argument in Season 7. But during Season 8, they try to work together to find Jormungandr and lure him back into the Grunkle Iron Cage. And that doesn't really work out after multiple attempts. Meanwhile, Sledkin is also trying to find the God's Realm for her own purpose. She wants to find the source of all dragonite so that she can make a profit for the Rake Corporation. And then when she does, she ends up putting the dragons at risk. Because the God's Realm is home to a super dragonite that gives off all the oxygen in the entire hidden world. Without it, dragons would literally not be able to breathe. Sledkin actually manages to take it from its spot, but before she can return to the surface, she ends up trying to fight against the Dragon Riders, and in her greed, falls to her death. Tom restores the super dragonite, and thus the God Realm is restored. Unfortunately, Jormungandr is still a threat, and even though Buzzsaw doesn't really care about dragonkind, he discovers this when Jormungandr attacks Jack. And the thing is, even though it started from a cycle of abuse, Jack and Buzzsaw actually managed to form a bond. Buzzsaw really cares about Jack and doesn't want him to die. This is kind of a redemption arc for him. I'm just very sad that it was only in the last 3 episodes where he was redeemed. That does bring me to a point though, because Buzzsaw is actually more evil than Sledkin. Sure, Sledkin was irredeemable because she doesn't care about dragons at all. She just views them as mindless animals and doesn't care about their health, safety, or anything. They're just an obstacle on her way to a profit margin. And it was clear that she would rather die than give up on her greed, which is a real shame. But she's also not as evil as Buzzsaw. While she didn't really care about the dragons, she did have respect for human life. Buzzsaw didn't have either. While he did learn to love and care for Jack, which is a start of a redemption arc, unfortunately we don't get to see that follow through. And it doesn't help that Buzzsaw tried to kill the Dragon Riders and other people on multiple occasions. Anyway, back to the story. Jormungandr tries to bring about Ragnarok, and he goes about this by attacking the God's realm so that he can take away the super dragon sight and suffocate all dragon life. Luckily, the dragon riders put a stop to him, and they gather a dragon army, including the king of dragons, the Elder Nightlight. Unfortunately, the Elder Nightlight dies in the battle against Jormungandr, but just before he died, he passed on his alpha status to Thunder. So now Thunder is the king of all dragons, and he uses his alpha abilities to gather an even bigger army, one that includes the Fault Ripper and the Sky Torcher, who was nearly killed by Jormungandr and wants revenge. Then Jormungandr attacks Rake Town, and the dragon army gathers on the surface to put an end to Jormungandr's reign. And then when they knock Jormungandr unconscious, the dragon riders drag his very large unconscious body back to his Gronkle Iron prison that Hiccup made, and so Jormungandr is locked up. The dragon realms are kept safe, but unfortunately in the final battle, Rake Town was mostly destroyed, and luckily no one was hurt, but unfortunately it put an end to the exploration. So now the dragon riders are forced to say goodbye to their dragons, and it helps that the dragons realize that humans and dragons aren't meant to be together. The hidden world was never a place for humans to roam. Dragons have been living peacefully, isolated from humanity for over 1,000 years, and the first problems that they have all started because humans came down to the hidden world. And even though it hurts, Thunder convinces all of the dragons to say goodbye to their riders, and thus dragons return to the hidden world, and the Rake Corporation realizes that an earthquake caused all of the destruction, costing them millions, so the Rake Corporation shut down the fissure project, so no more exploration of the fissure. And so the dragon riders are once again disbanded, but they decide to keep in touch through Zoom calls on a personal website created by Alex. I love the character growth that these guys had. Tom was able to develop himself as someone who thinks before he acts. June was able to convince her mom that even though myths and legends are fake, they are inspired by real stories and there's truth behind them. And also, D'Angelo was able to gain the confidence to stand up to his dad to follow his dreams of becoming an animal veterinarian. And Alex was able to come out of her tech shell and make some real friends. Eugene was a self-centered jerk, but now, even though he's still self-centered, he cares about the people around him, which I thought was really good. They handled all of these character arcs really well. The only concern that I have is Buzzsaw, or Leonard. Buzzsaw was kind of a deranged maniac for the entire series except for the last 3 episodes when he started a redemption arc by caring for Jack. Unfortunately, he's still down in the hidden realm, probably causing chaos as the self-proclaimed Dragon King. Or maybe not. Maybe he realizes that it's not okay to sell these dragons. I am happy that Ford and Winston decided to stop working for him though. But anyway, that's it for the story review. So in summary, Dragons the Nine Realms was a really great series because there was just so much lore introduced. We got a ton of really cool brand new dragons, as well as learning some fun facts about the dragons we already know and love, and how the dragons helped inspire a lot of our modern day myths and legends, especially the story of the Nine Realms. However, I do have one concern. In the series, we see the story of Hiccup and the dragon riders of the past traveling down to the hidden world to stop Jormungandr from being a threat to the hidden realm and locking him up in a Grunkle iron cage. I would have loved to see this in a potential How to Train Your Dragon 4, but again, it might have ruined the ending of the 3rd series. However, again, there's clearly a story to be told there, and not to mention the fact that they straight up took the ending where they said humans never went to the hidden world, and then in the Nine Realms, we see that they actually did go down there. So, what's the deal? But in summary, I would say that Dragons the Nine Realms is a great TV show. Nowhere near as good as any of the main How to Train Your Dragon media, not as good as the films, not as good as the original TV series, but still really great and a good continuation for the franchise, especially if you want to see dragons in the modern day. But that's it for my review. What do you guys think? Make sure to leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, what is your favorite dragon species introduced in the Nine Realms? Also, please consider supporting me through my channel membership program by clicking the join button down below, or you can just do the free option and subscribe. But with that in mind, I hope that you're all staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye bye.
What is this thing? An old Viking shovel? Or some kind of giant spoon to stir their gruel?
Nah, looks like a fake leg to me.
Eugene, for once in your life, can you just be serious?